Fun එක next level කරන dialogue fan blaster.
Tonight on First at 9 this Sunday, the 8th of December 2024. The need of the hour. Sri Lanka needs to promote ethical consumption and responsibility while encouraging fair labour practices within the country's manufacturing sector, asserts the Prime Minister. Friends indeed. India and Japan grant aid for flood-affected Sri Lankans. The upper hand. Having supply chain standards will give Sri Lanka a competitive advantage to secure better prices for value-added exports, says the Dutch envoy. The Paradise Island. Tourism earnings at $272 million in November. Foreign remittances increased to $530 million month on month.
Chilo Dairy, Sri Lankawama Kiren Perata. ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
කණ්ඩ පරිස්සම් කරගත්තොත් අපි පරිස්සම්.
Asian Paints Causeway Aquasave වැස්සත් මට්ටුවෙන් ගෙදරත් තිස්නේ.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Derana First at 9. I'm Aditya Singha joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Now, taking you straight to your top story this evening, while the over 468,000 people affected by the country's recent inclement weather get their lives gradually back on track, the Japanese government granted 300 million rupees worth of flood aid to ease the burden on those Sri Lankans still reeling in the aftermath of the torrential rains. The flood relief package granted by Japan will accommodate people in 13 districts of the country. Meanwhile, as part of India's Neighbourhood First policy, the Government of India also provided flood relief packages to nearly 2,100 families in the northern district. Upon a request made by the Sri Lankan government, the government of Japan announced the grant of emergency relief assistance through the Japan International Cooperation Agency to Sri Lanka in response to the damages caused by the recent inclement weather. Accordingly, the Japanese government extended aid worth around 300 million rupees to Sri Lanka to support the flood victims of the country. The emergency supplies, comprising 230 tents, 30 plastic sheets and 1,300 sleeping pads, were delivered via a special cargo plane that arrived at the Bandaranaike International Airport in Katunayaka last night. The supplies were handed over to the local authorities for distribution by the Japanese ambassador to Sri Lanka, Izumata Akio.
The Japanese government through JICA funding provided aid worth 300 million rupees to Sri Lanka to support those affected by bad weather conditions. We are thankful to the Japanese government for delivering this flood relief package to the country.
Japan always stands up when a friend Sri Lanka is in need. This is another testament to a deeply rooted friendship and cooperation between our two countries. Together with the assistance we provided earlier through UNFPA and JICA, we really hope the difficulty for the people in affected areas will be mitigated by this emergency assistance. The key is to deliver these goods as soon as possible, and we need cooperation from the Sri Lankan government.
In response to a request made by the local government, the Japanese government provided this flood relief package to Sri Lanka to assist those affected by the recent adverse weather in 13 districts of the country. We will hand over these relief packages to the flood-affected people immediately. The relief material will be handed over to the relevant district secretariats for distribution to the people affected by the adverse weather conditions.
Meanwhile, the Indian government also provided relief assistance to those affected by adverse weather conditions in the northern province. The distribution of the relevant material were carried out yesterday to approximately 2,100 families in the Mana and Mullaitivu districts.
පිරිපුන් ජීවිතයකට සේවයට ඔබ සමගින් පෙරට Union Assurance.
Welcome to Cinnamon Life, South Asia's biggest entertainment hub, where awe awaits.
චන්දුරුසුමේ කාගෙන් මන අපේ සිග TV සඳහා සුපිරි ඩීල්.
Sadaharita Plantations Limited, celebrating 22 years of your trust.
Now, the latest stats of the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority revealed a total of 1,804,873 tourist arrivals this year, bringing the count much closer to the target of 2.3 million tourist arrivals set for 2024. The recent report revealed 184,158 tourist arrivals in the country between the 1st and the 30th of November. During the third week of last month, from the 15th to the 21st of November, 42,376 tourist arrivals were recorded as the highest number of arrivals within the month. The highest number of tourists arrived from India, with a total of 41,120 tourists touching down in Sri Lanka, while the Russian Federation had the second highest number of tourist arrivals, with a total of 29,053 arrivals. Meanwhile, the CBSL Economic Indicator report revealed that the tourism earnings have increased up to $272.9 million this November, compared to last year's November earnings of $205.3 million. Overall, the tourism earnings from January to November for 2024 is $2.8 billion, indicating a 56% increase compared to last year's earnings of $1.7 billion between January and November. Minister of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Employment and Tourism Vijay Herath says that for the first time Sri Lanka has combined the subjects of foreign affairs and tourism under a single ministry, given the interconnected nature of the two fields. Speaking at the same event, Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya emphasizes the importance of the country's apparel and textile sector becoming globally competitive in a manner never before accomplished. The International Bazaar and Cultural Extravaganza 2024, organized by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Employment and Tourism in collaboration with the Sri Lanka Foreign Service Association and Good Market Sri Lanka, was held yesterday in Colombo. The event was graced by Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Employment and Tourism Vijay Herath. Okay. All funds generated at the event are expected to be donated to the M.H. Omar Liver Cancer Facility at the Colombo North Centre for Liver Diseases.
This is a noble cause that would contribute to the enhancement of specialized healthcare facilities for Sri Lankans. For the first time, we have brought the subjects of foreign affairs and tourism under the one ministry in view of the intervened nature of these two areas of work. This event, comprising stalls by different countries, cultural performances and a fashion show that will feature members of the diplomatic corps and international organizations graciously showcasing sustainable Sri Lankan apparel, resonates well with this outlook.
We are really proud of our designers, we are really proud of our manufacturers. We really want to make it possible and we really want to make it easy for you to display your products, to display your talent and to take Sri Lanka to the world in ways that we have not been able to do before. And are also really helping to take Sri Lanka globally, to make Sri Lanka known globally at a level that we have not been known before. Today, Sri Lanka's apparel and textile industry operates under a banner of garments without guilt. And today, to be able to host this event, to be able to have this event at Good Market, which is not just about stuff and buying things, but also about an ethical consumer life, of consuming with responsibility, of making sure that what you consume are ethically compliant and comply with fair labor practices. I think all of these values are values that we really want to inculcate and that we really want to promote in our manufacturing and industrial sectors. And we're really pleased to see this collaboration between so many good initiatives.
Fast track your career from O levels with eSoft.
Diabetol සීනි වලින් පරිස්සම් වන ඔබට අමතක නොවන පෝෂණය.
Prime Group ලංකාවේ ප්‍රථම වතාවට හඳුන්වා දෙන land leasing ලේසියෙන් මීටමක්.
Single 1111 up to 60% off from the 11th November to the 17th of November.
Kalani wire කිසිගින්නක් නැහැ.
කිසිගින්නක් නැහැ. Kalani Fire Shield Wire.
Now echoing Dr. Haruni Amarasuria's sentiments to a certain degree, the ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to Sri Lanka, Bonnie Horbach, states that if Sri Lanka further improves its social standards, it could gain a competitive advantage over other countries in the region when expanding trade in value-added products with the European markets. Speaking on our current affairs program at Hyde Park with Indivari Amuwatta, the Dutch ambassador elaborated that European countries are willing to pay higher prices for goods that meet their preferred ethical practices and standards. Commenting on the recent return of Sri Lankan colonial-era artifacts looted by the Dutch, the ambassador noted that the Netherlands would continue to collaborate with Sri Lanka to conduct further research and foster a deeper understanding of the historical relationship between the two nations.
You were talking about the Netherlands' initiative to return some of the stolen artifacts during colonial time. There was discussion about flora and fauna and sharing of knowledge, especially those that Sri Lanka now does not have this knowledge anymore. So in transferring them the know-how and constant observation and monitoring of how they are taken care of here in Sri Lanka, how will that be improved?
I think you should be very proud of your museum and your museum experts, because most of them are so enthusiastic and passionate about their job, have a high quality. What we have been doing is we have been trying to set up exchange programs for master students from Sri Lanka to go to the Netherlands and study museology in the Netherlands. We now have 5 students that are in the Netherlands, and when they return, hopefully their knowledge and expertise and everything they have learned, they can share with their colleagues in the museums. So that is one of the programs that came out of the return of these artifacts. It's also not entirely true that we know more about the items than you do. When we were doing the research on these objects, it was a joint research team with Dutch and Sri Lankan researchers, and they researched the items that were about to be returned. It's unbelievable the knowledge that we actually gain if we work together on these items. So we might have more technical capability, but the knowledge that the Sri Lankans have about their own object is much higher than what we have. When I first started on these, the return of these artifacts, and it was started already far before I arrived, people told me, oh, we just keep those items in the Netherlands because they're so nicely put in the Rijksmuseum. But I think it's also good for the Sri Lankan population to be able to see them, to look at them, to know the stories.
You talk about a shared past and you're talking about a shared future. Where do you think trade relations will go from here? And investments, you mentioned that there has been a slight deterrence.
I think even though the small dip in our trade relations, we are still the 7th trade partner of Sri Lanka. So let's not underestimate our relations with Sri Lanka. And the EU as a whole is still the 1st trading partner of Sri Lanka. And we are part of the EU, and as the European Union is such an important partner of Sri Lanka, we should look at where Sri Lanka can really play a role of significance. It's a relatively small island. What Sri Lanka has done over the years very well is that its social sector and social standards are very good. And that's what the EU and the Netherlands specifically are looking at. Of course, we want to do business the cheapest way possible, but we're also focusing on how people are being treated in the supply chain, how you deal with your environmental standards, what you're doing in regards to environmental degradation of your country. And there, I think Sri Lanka is doing a lot better than its neighbors, and it will become a focus of the Netherlands as well. We want to have good products flowing into the Netherlands, and for those products we are happy to pay a little bit more as long as we know what the supply chain, how it is organized. And I think we're heading into that direction. And if Sri Lanka is able and willing to be a little bit in front of other countries in the region, it will actually have a competitive advantage. Even though it seems it is more expensive, it will help you to sell your products for a higher price and for a higher value of the people of Sri Lanka.
Economic security has become a critical component of national security, says Dr. Ganeshan Vignaraja, Senior Fellow at the Overseas Development Institute. He made those remarks during a recent roundtable discussion on enhancing Sri Lanka's economic security. Meanwhile, Ravinath Arya Singh, Executive Director of the Lakshman Kadirgamar Institute, emphasizes that Sri Lanka must carefully navigate regional power struggles to avoid falling prey to regional zero-sum outcomes in the future. The Institute of National Security Studies recently organized a roundtable discussion focused on the topic improving Sri Lanka's economic security through its strategic location in the Indian Ocean. The event was moderated by Dr. Ganeshan Vignaraja, visiting senior fellow at the Overseas Development Institute and professorial fellow at the Gateway House.
The COVID-19 pandemic plus the Russia-Ukraine crisis and what they call the Red Sea conflict have really led economic security to become a key part of the way in which we think about national security. The economy is stabilizing compared to the dark days of 2022. Inflation is in negative territory, so we have sort of deflation according to what the central bank says. We also have about $6 billion in reserves in Sri Lanka, and there is hope that we can grow at 4% in this 2024 and 2025, which is much better than negative growth. But we have external debt repayments starting in 2028, and it's on the capital, right? It's not just the interest, which has already started.
This maritime infrastructure, when the governments or the private sector, when they put it up, they're looking at the demand by the market, demand by the trade or industry, and by the users, and that dictates what kind of a maritime infrastructure is required. And we are not a producing nation. Our import-export is insignificant in the global scale. The biggest population is in our neighborhood. The population dictates what is our market potentials are. So population dictates why the government should be investing on infrastructure.
We are the center of the Indian Ocean. We have all the potential. We have had many visions of how this region might be run. There is a narrative, there are perceptions, but how do we stay away from getting cornered into this, what I would like to call this zero-sum game which is cast on Sri Lanka. And that to me was the challenge for Sri Lanka leaders before. It will be the challenge for today, and it will be the challenge for the foreseeable future.
We have an ambition to become a $5 billion industry by 2030 and have 200,000 workforce and 1,000 startups. So these are the targets. Large players are investing in Sri Lankan talent. Although it's a strength for us, it's also a challenge with regard to supplying industry-ready skilled talent. Country branding is one of the challenges that we face right now because of the recent economic hardships that we face, and then maintaining the competitiveness of the industry.
Now, on the matter of regional tensions, hundreds of fishermen went on strike in Rameshwaram, India yesterday, condemning the arrests of 14 Tamil Nadu fishermen by the Sri Lankan Navy and the seizure of their boats. According to the Indian media reports, Mechanized Boats Fishermen's Association held a meeting on Friday where they decided to go on strike and decided to call off fishing activities yesterday. The association condemned the Sri Lankan Navy's arrest of 14 Tamil Nadu fishermen and demanded the immediate release of those fishermen. Now let's have a look at some thoughts shared in the political arena today off the back of the recent imposition of maximum price regulation on rice.
President Anura Disanayaka increased the price of 1 kilo of nadu rice, which was previously retailed at a guaranteed price of 180 rupees to 230 rupees. Who benefits from this? The President has given the opportunity for intermediaries to claim arbitrage profits of 50 rupees per kilo of nadu rice.
The current maximum prices of a kilo of nadu rice were determined based on its cost of production. Accordingly, the wholesale price of nadu rice is currently at 225 rupees, while its retail price has been brought up to 230 rupees. We will not bow down to these deceitful businessmen and those involved in the black market.
The President convened a meeting with the rice mill owners yesterday. However, it seems that the decision arrived at by the President subsequent to the meeting has been beneficial for rice mill owners. The maximum price of a kilo of nadu rice was increased to 230 rupees. According to reports, the country will run into a slate shortage in the near future. These shortages have led to a broader food shortage affecting the general public.
It has not even been a month since we took over the country's reins. The people of this country are well aware of the way in which the previous regimes governed the country. However, we will not follow their modus operandi to lead this country. We will govern the country on our own terms. We request the people to remain patient until then.
The incumbent government would have already collapsed if they didn't adhere to former President Ranil Wickremesinghe's agenda. They still have enough time to follow the plan set by the former president. The people of this country continue to make the same mistake. The people made a huge mistake in 2019. Those people fell into the same pit once more this year. It seems that the people have not learned a lesson from their previous mistakes.
Now in other local news, the Liberty Publishers Derana Women's Magazine recently celebrated its 4th anniversary. Derana commenced its operations in 2020 with diversity and innovation, breaking away from the traditional mold of a women's magazine. The Derana Women's Magazine, launched in 2020, celebrated its 4th anniversary yesterday at the Vihara Mahadevi Park under the patronage of Secretary General of Parliament Kushani Rohanadira and founder of Liberty Publishers, parliamentarian Dilith Jayavira. The event provided the platform for local entrepreneurs to promote their products in stalls set up at the park premises, while also providing the opportunity for children to hone their artistic skills.
මොන පත්තරයකට වුණත් දක්ෂ කර්තෘවරයෙක් හිටියට මදි පත්තරයේ අයිතිකාරයා ඒ කර්තෘකේ කොන්ද කඩනවා. හැබැයි වාසනාවට වගේ අපේ පත්තරයේ අයිතිකාරයා දෙවිච ඇවිල මහත්තයා කවදාවත් අපේ පත්තර කර්තෘවේ කර්තෘවරුන්ගේ කොඳු කැඩුවේ නැහැ. මම හිතන්නේ එතුමා දැනට දේශපාලඥයෙක් වෙලා එතුමාගේ දේශපාලන මතය නියෝජනය කරන්න කියලා අපේ කිසිම මාධ්‍ය ආයතනයක එවැනි බලපෑමක් නැහැ.
I named this magazine Dharani. The motto of this newspaper translates to "She who endures life with happiness." Even though it is widely accepted that this society is patriarchal in nature, and even though the same is taught in schools, we know that this society is actually matriarchal. That was the rationale behind the motto "She who endures life with happiness." The average Sri Lankan household is run by the mother. The central ethos of this newspaper is happiness. Women bring happiness to all of us.
අපේ පුවත්පතේ මූලික අරමුණම උනේ මේ සතුට. මොකද සතුට ගෙනෙන්නේ ඇයි?
කාන්තාවක් මූලික තැන දරන ආයතනවල හුඟක් වෙලාවට මගේම කනටත් ඇහිලා තිනවා කටයුත්තක් සාර්ථක වුණොත් කියනවා ඕක ඉතින් එයාගේ ලක් එක තමයි කියලා. වැරදුනොත් කියන්නේ අපි කිව්වනේ ඔය ගෑනිට ඕක කරගන්න බෑ. ඉතින් ඕක තමයි මේ මතය. දැන් පසුගිය පාර්ලිමේන්තු ගණනාවක් තුලම අපිට කවදාවත් ජාතික මට්ටමේදී අපේ රටේ පාර්ලිමේන්තු කාන්තා නියෝජනය 105ක් ඉක්මවල යන්නට ලැබිලා නැහැ. නමුත් මේ තත්ත්වය දැන් මේ තියෙන පාර්ලිමේන්තුව තුළ විනාශ වෙලා 10%ක ආසන්න අගයකට පැමිණ තියෙනවා. ඒ කාන්තාවන් වශයෙන් ඒක අපිට විශාල සතුටු වෙන්නට පුළුවන් කාරණාවක් ආඩම්බරයක්.
Welcome back. Now in your business news, Sri Lanka's foreign remittances from migrant workers deposited in November this year amounted to $530.1 million, marking an improvement compared to the $517.4 million figure recorded in October. The central bank reported that workers' remittances recorded in August 2024 show an increase of $425 million compared to the same period last year. In 2023, workers' remittances amounted to $5.39 billion from January to November. In comparison, foreign remittances recorded from January to November 2024 stands at $5.96 billion. Accordingly, the cumulative influx of foreign remittances from January to November this year reflect a year-on-year growth of 10.4%. And now here's a look at some corporate news in brief. The Commercial Bank of Ceylon announced that the bank is set to wipe out 3 million rupees from the December spends of its customers, giving them an opportunity to indulge in the holiday shopping spree with added zest. Any personal credit card holder of Commercial Bank that spends a minimum of 75,000 rupees in December will be eligible to go into a draw from which 60 lucky cardholders will each win a bill wipeout up to 50,000 rupees. Credit card purchases made at point-of-sale terminals along with online transactions and payments made via the Q Plus payment app in the month of December will be eligible for the draw. Meanwhile, CT Holdings PLC announced the dealings made by AMTS Page, non-executive, non-independent director of the company, on the 5th of December. Accordingly, Page purchased a total of 5,011 ordinary shares at 315 rupees per share. The relevant transaction was notified to the board of directors on the day of the purchase. In other corporate news, Lanka Hospitals Corporation PLC announced the resignation of Dr. Ravindra Ruberu, an independent non-executive director of the company, with effect from the 6th of December 2024. In its corporate disclosure, the company stated that Dr. Ruberu has no relevant interest in the company as at the date of his resignation. That's all the news we have for you tonight. Thank you. Have a great night.